Hey everyone, welcome to Life Unpotted. This is Daisy.
Hey everyone, this is Sophie.
And we started a podcast and then we paused and we said, why are we doing this podcast? And it's always good to check in on things that you do because when you don't, that's what causes you to go on autopilot. And we recognize that sometimes we have a tendency to just talk at each other during these podcasts with the things we're realizing. And we want to make a point to talk to each other and have a conversation because you never really know where it's going to go when you can talk alongside with someone. So I think it's important to always check in with why you're doing something.
Yeah, I think it's really easy to get comfortable with things in life, like especially because we talk to each other all the time. I mean, we're dating. So that in and of itself is a very interesting thing because I think it's really easy when you spend time with someone all the time, whether that's your partner or your family or a close friend, to take them for granted and to assume that you know everything about them or treat them differently than you would treat somebody else. So I think I've been kind of questioning the ideas I have of you. And on that note, this thought that, or really like how easy it is to get comfortable and start thinking that things are boring or mundane or it's, oh, okay, we're just podcasting again and just me and you and we don't have a guest. And I don't know.
Well, I wanted to say something because initially what we were talking about was resistance. And it's kind of funny to think about how we podcast sometimes where we go on these tangents individually about what we're processing or what we're thinking about. In a lot of ways, on both ends, you can be resisting the other person talking so much, or you can resist yourself talking so much. And I guess I just say that because if you're ever resisting something, it's really good to check in and ask why you're resisting it. There could be a multitude of reasons, but what if one of them is because maybe there's a better way to do it? Maybe we want to play around with our cadence. Maybe we want to play around with going back and forth more because it's so easy, like you said, to get comfortable, to assume things are the way they are. And that's autopilot. That's autopilot. And autopilot is not interesting when you're creating something because you got to mix it up. You got to change it up. You got to not get too comfortable because when you get too comfortable, you stop innovating, you stop making changes, you stop growing. And this is in line with everything in our life since coming back from the retreat of just everything being on the table of looking at it in a new way. Because again, it's just so easy to live on autopilot. So when you have an experience where all of that is ripped away and you start coming back to life and looking at your life and you're like, well, I actually don't like the way this makes me feel and I'm not just going to be comfortable with it and do it because it's always been done because I feel like there's a new slate. So I think it's an interesting thing to try out, and I'm glad we're trying out and we're aware of this, of why are we doing this? And let's do it differently in this moment.
Well, you said like whenever you're creating something, and immediately I thought of when you're creating something creatively, but then I was just reminded that we're creating our life every minute. Like we have a life, we're born, and then we die. And in between all that time, we wake up, we have a day, and we go to sleep. And it's really easy for me to fall into these patterns where, ugh, it's just another day. And I'm so caught up in my head and my mind that life just feels really boring and mundane and pointless.
What it sounds like you're describing is that you're taking your thoughts as factual or you're believing your thoughts. Because I can really relate to that of waking up and you see the wave of thoughts come through. And it's really easy to be like, oh, right, okay, this is how the day is going to go. And you can believe them or you can create space. And like creating space is difficult. And I feel like I've been creating space the last few days. I'm curious how you feel with your experience of believing your thoughts. Do you feel like you've been believing them? Do you feel like you've been creating space for them? So what's your experience been?
My experience has been kind of a feeling of like I'm back at square one. Like post-retreat and doing mushrooms and opening up so much emotion. It's been really weird because I have felt like, I guess I've been thinking a lot. I've been thinking a lot and thinking about the future a lot, thinking about the past a lot, reflecting. I think I've kind of forgotten how to actually sit still and to be here. And what I've noticed is that when I'm facing really, really intense emotions and on this journey of choosing to live a more intentional life, a more open life, and doing things like going to retreats and changing the people I spend time with and questioning my career, questioning the food I eat and where it's sourced from and the moment to moment experiences I have in life, it's really overwhelming, I think. I think it's really, 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 really overwhelming to enter this experience where I'm kind of in like a void of emptiness, meaning I'm floating in space in a galaxy. And to really, really understand that, I have felt like I've really understood the craziness of our existence. And I think sometimes I get a little stuck there. I get a little stuck in, holy shit, I'm going to die one day and this is all going to end. To like on the other side of the spectrum, it's like, ugh, like I don't know what to eat for dinner. So I guess I'm just kind of confused why I fluctuate between those. And it's like in between all that is also a lot of really, really intense emotions and pain. So like, are those both thought on both ends of the spectrum?
It almost feels as though the content of the thought is not what matters at all. It could be, I won the track race. I'm a track star. I'm the best. Or it could be like, I got second place. I didn't get first place. I'm the worst. I'm awful. And I think I give that polarity of thought because you're saying, how can I be so afraid of like my existence or being aware of it to being upset that I'm making dinner? But I guess my thought is the nature of thought is that it doesn't matter what it is that you're thinking. It's not the uniqueness of your thoughts. It's the pure fact of looking at your thoughts as real. There's no difference between when you're having an existential crisis and when you're feeling annoyed you have to make dinner or figure out what you want to make. Both of those things are the exact same thing. It's taking the thought to be real. And I guess I'm trying to think how to break this down a little bit more because at first thought, you might say, okay, yeah, of course I don't take my thoughts as fact because that's your thoughts saying that because they want to keep control over you. I've had this experience where we're talking, Sophie, and you poke at me or prod of being like, are you sure you don't believe that thought? And the reality is I do believe the thought. Whether that be I'm feeling afraid and resistant to do something. So it's not as black and white as if you think you're believing the thought or not, because sometimes the belief erodes our consciousness. It's like it goes deep down into our subconscious. We're not aware of it if we're actually believing our thought. Because if we are aware that we are believing a thought, that we're frustrated about having to figure out what to make for dinner, of course, if we realize we're believing that thought, we're not going to feel the emotional charge that comes with it. Does that make sense?
Well, I was just about to ask you if any of this is making sense. So I don't know if it's making sense. I'm not sure.
Well, it feels like a good conversation as where I feel engaged and I feel as though I'm not thinking as I'm talking. So I take that as a cue that it's valuable to me. So it has inherent value. But I guess I want to talk about this because it's so easy. And I think what I said does make sense. And I'll say it again. When we're thinking about our thoughts and if we're believing them or not, it's not as simple. Because we're going to, of course, think that we're not believing a thought. If I'm over here upset that I have to figure out how to make dinner, I'm believing the thoughts. even if I say that I'm not, because there's an emotional repercussion that is coming with it. And as soon as I am aware that I can be experiencing this thought that I feel annoyed about how I have to make dinner, well, I can kind of laugh at it and be like, oh, right, I'm annoyed. Yeah, I feel like that thought is passing that I'm annoyed, but I don't have to identify with it. It can just pass. But this can obviously go much deeper. Like, that's a silly example, but a real one nonetheless. This can go deeply into like our feelings and our emotional states, that on a day-to-day basis, when we're waking up and we feel like the cloud come over our head when we wake up, it's not as obvious like to realize, right, this is something I'm experiencing. It's something that's going to pass. Like, I don't have to take this as fact and carry this cloud around me with me all day.
So it's like the difference of when you're experiencing something to have the awareness and clarity to understand it's just temporary and it's not a reflection of your whole life and your entire experience. Because, yeah, so I think that's how I've been feeling, that it feels like recently the emotions I experience, the thoughts I experience, they're so intense that if they feel so consuming, like they feel like nothing else exists outside of them. So is that a result of getting so lost in the experience that I've forgotten that I am the observer of all of this? And I guess a follow-up question I have is like, a huge caveat has been that we're processing both together. I mean, separately, but both individually. We're processing a lot of stuff still post a psychedelic retreat. And that really expands your mind, and it really expands and kind of opens up your subconscious mind to revealing to me a lot of stuff. So, can you process intense emotions while maintaining as the observer? Do we have to get lost in the experience? Because is it possible to have clarity all the time? What is clarity? Like, what is clarity then? Because something I've been thinking about recently has been wanting to acknowledge that there's no way to bypass how hard these experiences in life really are, that being a human is really, really difficult. Like, meaning if I'm processing pain that I felt, that I'm feeling, that pain is really real. It's real. And I think for a while I was trying to believe that maybe, okay, if I just observe this, it's not going to be real. But what does it mean to be real? Like, it was real in that moment. So do I have to now bring that into the next moment? Do you follow what I'm saying?
This is like a two-part thing. I want to dial it back a little bit so we can revisit the latest thing you just said. But I want to bring it back to, you said something really good a while ago of having the ability to not believe thought is having the awareness and clarity. And if you think about your day as a circle, we're just going around and around and around and around again. And you can think of our thoughts as like potential stop signs. And, you know, if we really start believing the thought, it becomes a traffic jam. But the more awareness and clarity we're able to sprinkle throughout the circle of, instead of having a stop sign and getting our thoughts all jumbled into a traffic jam by believing them, we might get caught up in them for a moment, but then the clarity and the awareness sprinkles back. Like, I think it's an art. Like, I don't think we are ever in full clarity by any means. I think that the more we practice it, the more that we become aware of these really big things, we have bigger awareness sprinkled throughout the circle of our day. So it's like going back to the idea of meditation, meditation isn't isolated to sitting on a meditation pillow. It's throughout our day. It's remembering. Like, that's the definition of meditation, is to remember. And for me, that means to remember that everything is here, everything is fine, to have that awareness and clarity that, wow, that relief, I'm not my thoughts. But we can spend weeks in thought. And I want to go back to your specific question about it being post-retreat. We individually are processing really intense stuff. So is it possible to have awareness and clarity amidst being in the depths of processing something? And like, I don't have the answer. All I know is that I have my experience. And what I've seen with myself is me ping-ponging into like the depths of being lost in thought, like deeply, like hit rewind to 5 years ago of like losing total awareness. And I kind of feel like I've perpetually been in that since we left the retreat. Now, of course, it's confusing because there's been also times where I've been totally clear and really aware. But it seems like when you have an experience like a retreat where you really face things head on, coming out of that and coming back into your circle, if you think of your day as a circle, coming back into your days, it almost feels like you have to be able to adjust to feeling these depths. Like, it almost is like I feel like I'm feeling a lot more intensely. So there's like an adaptation period. And during that adaptation period, it's felt easier to get way caught back up in the thoughts with less clarity and awareness of it being just the thoughts. But today I've started to recognize that, you know, the reality of I've been sitting through a lot of uncomfortable things and not necessarily resisting it, but I'm starting to feel like, okay, here I am. I feel more grounded. I feel less reaching for things. So I guess just to answer that last question, or the second to last question you asked, Soph, like, it's so nuanced. And I think as we deepen our awareness, we have to like learn to like ride a bike on two wheels again, because we have to learn to exist with the depths of feeling in our day-to-day life. And that can be really jarring, and that can catapult us back into getting lost in the thought. So I almost feel like it's like metaphorically hitting our head on the wall for a few weeks coming out of this retreat and realizing, oh, right, I have to learn to have this clarity and awareness that my thoughts are just thoughts again, with this new depth of feeling.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Which is crazy because like, it's just crazy. Because these past few weeks post-retreat, post-taking mushrooms have felt like literally a tornado. Like, it's felt like every day has kind of felt like a tornado, but I've been watching the tornado happen. I've been watching it all happen. So it's really felt like, and it's interesting because I've been reflecting in my actual mushroom trip at the retreat, the actual experience of taking mushrooms at the retreat. It was intense for me, but the aftermath has felt more intense. And I wonder, does that reflect how much I allowed myself to feel while I was on the mushrooms? Or when you're tripping and you're opening up your subconscious mind, like, think of your subconscious mind as literally a jar. And since last retreat that we went on, which is in June of 2023, I've been very much in life, like in the moment to moment, in the present moment. And I think when you take mushrooms and have these really deep psychedelic experiences, you like leave the moment of what's physically right in front of you. And in some way, you're really actually more present in the moment because mushrooms enhance colors and they enhance things in front of you. But when you increase your dosage, you're so deep in your internal world that it can be really, it has felt very jarring to go that deep. It's felt so fucking scary to go that deep. And that's why mushrooms can feel like 30 years of therapy in 2 hours, which is so crazy. It's like, why do I even do this to myself? And I see, because normally it's really, 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 really hard to access all of this shit that controls me. So I feel really grateful to have had that experience and to have gone on the retreat. And it's just kind of like, yeah, like it feels like my head's kind of, I'm also sick right now, so that my head literally hurts. I have a cold and I don't know what this is, but it has felt really hard to, and to anyone listening, like if you're healing and healing past trauma or healing deep wounds or really, really facing stuff, what I'm trying to say is, like, when you're doing all that, it can be really confusing to reintegrate into the here now and remember that what you were processing is not happening anymore. A lot of what you're processing is not from right now, it's from the past. It starts to feel like everything's actually happening right now because the experience is so real when you're opening up that can of your subconscious mind. And that's why it's so jarring. And that's why you're like, I can't grab anything. I don't know it's real, because you're experiencing things that maybe you never really, really experienced.
Whew. Yeah, that's true. Because a lot of the times when things happen throughout our lives, we don't have the awareness to see what it really is, so we can't process it. So instead of directly looking at it, it sits in the back seat of our mind, quietly controlling us. So we create stories of, I can't handle that, or I'm too overwhelmed, or I'm not smart enough, or the list goes on. And that's what it looks like for these things to silently control us. And that's why when you look at where we're at now and how we've been going in deep, which I'll come back to, you look back at your life when you were just living without looking at this stuff face to face, it seems a lot easier or simpler because you weren't looking at it face on. But you can't forget the feeling of believing those thoughts so deeply that if you don't get the promotion, you're worthless, you're stuck, you have to keep going down this route forever. Or that feeling of getting rejected from someone and thinking that it actually means something about you as a person. If you think about how your life looked when your thoughts really controlled you with hardly any gaps or breaks, you didn't have the awareness, or I'm talking about myself, I didn't have the awareness to realize that I wasn't my thoughts. So realizing you're not your thoughts is what sets you free, but there's also the responsibility and the accountability that comes with it, that you can't just autopilot and coast. You have to consistently take accountability for looking at the feelings that have controlled you your whole life, and you have to feel them with the awareness and relive them for the first time. And again, I'm just talking about my experience, and I'm talking to myself directly with what I've experienced. And it's hard to readjust to living life aware of how your feelings control you. So that means that you look at them directly, and that feels awful. And you resist it because you're like, but I shouldn't be feeling like this all the time. Why am I putting myself into depression? Why am I putting myself into these things? And it's like, but wait a minute, wait just a minute. That's just resistance. That's what's making you suffer. There's no question that these feelings are really heavy. There's no question that these feelings are really hard to navigate in a day-to-day life. But it's like when you are able to look at it intensely once and for all, you're actually free from it. Unless we drag our feet in the mud and resist feeling it. And then, yeah, that could be worse than being totally unaware of it because we're like in freaking purgatory. So coming back to this thing of resistance, it's like chances are if you feel like ass If you don't feel good, you're probably resisting allowing yourself to feel what you want to feel or what you need to feel. It's a big part of this experience for me, still work on it day to day, is letting go of the expectation of how each day should be, of how my life should be, of how I should be showing up. And that's hard because we've been conditioned to think that if things don't look a certain way, if we aren't working hard enough by grinding, that means something about us. And this stuff is so deeply centered in us that it makes you start to think that it's okay to neglect yourself and to just work hard. And to feel guilty if you're not doing that. And I guess I say that because that is a way in my life that I've resisted feeling things, is by justifying it by saying I'm going to work really hard. But in my opinion, like, that's not working really hard. Working really hard is really being aware of where you're at. Are your emotions where your feet are? Is your mind connected to your body? And are you going about your day like that? Because that's hard work. That's hard motherfucking work. And to the untrained eye, that might look like, what are you doing with your life? Why are you so lazy? You're just laying around. You're not doing anything. Of course, these are all the thoughts in my mind. But this is real work that allows you to get nowhere, but to experience the reality of where you actually are. So awareness means so many different things.
I started laughing really hard when you said it allows you to get nowhere, because it's really funny. Like, that's the thing when you're facing so much shit and healing and doing things like taking psychedelic therapy or just really facing stuff. In a lot of ways, like, you just end up back here, but you open. Okay, here's, I think, a good way to say it. It's like, if you want to have a clean house, you have to go through every drawer, organize, clear out all the shit you've been storing for so many years, go into the garage, clean the dust off the windowsill, like, look at all your shoes. You don't know if you want them. Just deal with. And I personally hate taking the time to clean up our apartment. I hate it. It's just like, I don't want to have to do it, which is kind of funny. But the reality of it is, if I want a clean house, if I don't want clutter everywhere, there is no way to have the clean house, if I don't take the time to pick up and open those drawers. You know, I don't know if the listener, do you have drawers, the junk drawers that have shit from like 20 years ago? I mean, for me, it's like 2 years ago of coins and Post-it notes and a phone that doesn't work anymore, just random ass shit. And it's like, you can metaphorically healing our world, our inner world of all the stuff that is controlling us. We can't expect to read one self-help book and feel good. Like, you have to actually do the freaking work. And I guess I am remembering what it means to do the work of facing pain and spending 2 to 3 weeks feeling like shit because I'm not running away. And I think back to so many experiences, like, say, perfect example, on a very lighter note, you just go through a breakup and you're single and it's really, really hard. So you start going out more and you start dating more. You start trying to fill that void with so many things. There's going to come a point in your life where you realize that void never went away. And there's no way to bypass healing the void. There's no way to feel free if we don't look at the feelings that are keeping us from feeling free. Freedom is something that's always attainable, but you have to spend maybe metaphorically a few weekends cleaning the house. Or you can go hire someone, but you'll never know that you were capable of doing it, that you were capable of spending all that time reorganizing all that shit, and that you could do it. that you could feel the intense emotions and you literally feel like you're dying. But then in a few weeks, be smiling at a joke your friend made. It's like it's all there, it's all on the table, it's all true, but it's all not truth. It's all things that we are just facing, but you can free yourself. But maybe it's like the journey of freeing yourself. Maybe we'll always be having to do this over and over again so long as we're alive. But that's why you don't want to accumulate new shit you're avoiding. Like in the present day, that's why you don't react and avoid, because it just becomes more shit that in 10 years from now, you're going to open up that can again of like, oh, fuck, what do I have to look at now from 10 years ago when I was healing everything from 10 years before that? Do you get what I mean? Like in the present day, in the present moment, today, 2024, May 6th, things are happening in life right now while you're also healing shit from 10 years ago. So it's like, it's a whirlwind to feel all that while also managing life right now. But I'm seeing like if you start avoiding life right now too, like you have to just acknowledge like it's all fucking hard. And I just see that I have been acknowledging that it's hard. And I think for a long time I've been trying to run away and find a route I can take where it's not hard. But that running, it's the running that got me to where I am now. And in a lot of ways, I don't know, it's also the experience. I can't change the hard experiences I went through, but I can't change this existence. I don't know. It's very complex. And I don't know. I have no answers. I'm just expressing myself right now because it feels like completely brand new again in a lot of ways.
Well, this might just be the first grounded, like feet on the grass conversation that we've had, where I feel like, and I could be totally wrong, that my feet are on the grass for a little while. They're here to stay for a little while. Where I feel like the past few weeks since returning from the retreat, I've been up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down with the intensity of emotions, of feeling them, to being like, okay, I'm good now. But then you feel them again. Like I feel like I've felt a lot of things in the last couple of weeks without running away from it. And I mean like deep things that were brought up by mushrooms. And I'll continue to do that. But I feel a lot more stable now. And I'm always careful to even say that. Because it's not ever a matter of I'm feeling things, I'm not. I'm feeling things and I'm not. Because I guess where I feel like I'm at now is that I can feel things without losing the awareness and clarity of thought quite as intensely as I have been. I don't know. Maybe all of it is that I'm just resisting less in this moment. So I just feel a lot freer and a lot lighter. And I honestly think that's a big part of it. And I think this conversation is a good example because I haven't thought about the time. I just did. But just because I was mentioning it, like I feel like in these conversations, there are times where I drag my feet and I'm resisting the conversation itself. But this has not been a conversation that I've resisted at all. It's felt like we've flowed. It's felt like we've connected, and we've both been connected to what we're saying and to what each other is saying and really following the line and listening to it. So I think that is usually for me a good barometer if I'm resisting or not. And bringing it back to how do I become aware of my thoughts? How do I become aware if I'm fully believing my thoughts? And I guess I'm looking at my experience, and if you're reacting at all, if you have an intense emotion, if you feel like you need something, it's like sit through all of that before doing anything. And it's not going to be enjoyable, but there's relief that comes. And eventually you're going to wake up one day and you're going to have learned to not resist. Like I think sometimes like we have to hold our hand and unlearn moment by moment what it means to not resist. And it might take little moments of a large period of time before not resisting becomes more easeful. And then you fall back into it and you have to learn it moment by moment. And then you wake up again and you're like, oh, this is what it's like to not resist. And I feel like I'm kind of just waking up from the last 2 weeks of having extreme anxiety and physically sitting through it to learn, to be reminded of what it means to not resist. But in this moment, in this conversation, I'm like, I don't have to think about not resisting. I can just rest in it.
And this is a really big realization I had on mushrooms at the retreat, because the first day I felt really uncomfortable. And I was so fixated on the fact that I felt uncomfortable. I was thinking so much about it. Why did I come to this retreat? I don't feel comfortable. Will I ever feel it? Like, all that existed in that moment was that. And what I realized was like, and I guess I'm still, I'm like reflecting on the retreat, and there's a lot of insight to come from that. You can't force yourself to get to a point where you are feeling quote unquote good. You can't force a state to happen. But if you try to force it and saying and Googling, how do I let go of my thoughts? How do I overcome my thoughts? How do I feel better? Like, you're thinking there's something that you have to physically overcome. But it's like with everything in life, I feel like we're always trying to exert control, and we're always trying to change things to get an outcome. But it just does not work that way. It doesn't work that way. You have to sit through what you're going through. And if you're really, 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 really sitting through it without a comment, without trying to change it, without grabbing for the caffeine to get the dopamine hit, or looking to your partner, or doing any of these things, if you're just like, sometimes I literally lay on the bed and I just sit there as the emotions like go through my body. There's no equation. There's nothing you will get. There's nothing that you will achieve. There's nothing that you have the perfect therapy session and everything will be fixed. Like, the state of peace and relaxation naturally arise on their own when you're not trying to get them. Because if you're thinking so much about the fact that you're thinking, holy shit, you're in for another thought loop. Because all of a sudden, you feel like, aha, I'm the genius. Now I'm thinking about all those thoughts and I think I have the answer over here. I'm Googling it. I'm looking it up. How to not think. But you're still thinking. Like, you're still doing it. And I'm talking to myself. That's all who I'm ever talking to. You're still doing the damn thing of trying so hard to change what's unfolding when you just look outside and like the tree was always blowing like that the past 3 weeks, but you were going through your own storm in your mind. Why is it stormy? Why is it raining? Why is it raining? Why is it raining? How does it not rain? Googling. But what if you just let the storm cloud pass? How would that change your experience? How would that change the duration of the shitty experience? 3 weeks? The 3 hours maybe? Or 1 day? Can I accept for 2 days that I'm just not going to feel 100% and that I'm feeling sad? Or am I going to try so hard in those 2 days to not feel it? That all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, you're in that cycle of the resistance bubble. You're pulling so hard. Holy shit, it's like every time it's back to this point. And podcasting, this has been really helpful to talk through it, because we've both been trying to turn off the storm cloud. How can I live a life where I don't have to watch the lightning? But you can't turn off the weather. But you can choose if you're going to sit back on the couch and watch the rain and say, oh, it's so beautiful when it rains because the plants get watered and it allows me to relax. Or you can sit there all day, oh, it's not sunny, I can't go outside. Which one is it?
Resistance is hell. Resistance. Well, we certainly didn't resist this conversation. I started like with the first episode, before we did this one, I did like a 7-minute intro. And you're like, should we redo it? And I wanted to resist it, but I was like, sure, yeah. And that's a big practice of the mushrooms, is that you just don't have the chance. You don't have the choice to not resist it. If you resist it, you literally go to hell. So if you're feeling anxious, you're in for a wild ride to learn what resistance is and to learn what not resisting is. And like hearing you, Sophie, even describe the difference between welcoming and accepting the clouds. It's been like cloudy 7 days straight. That's what Sophie's referencing. And to hear you just accept it in my body, I'm like, yeah, well, sure. And then to hear you like judging it, like in your example of resisting it, I'm like, oh, like that just feels awful. Like I don't want to go there. But I think of how like with this podcast, like there's plenty of episodes we have out where we're resisting the conversation. We're resisting doing it. Like a big chunk of time, we were just like resisting doing this because I was resisting everything in my life. But it also makes me think of like when I would work, how I would just resist it and how much worse you feel. All of your energy goes to resisting something. Is it done yet? Is it over? Whereas if you stop resisting most things, if not all things, you lose yourself in it and you become present doing it and you're not using much energy because it's enjoyable to not resist things. It's enjoyable to be in flow. And that is something I think back to like school of like, it did feel good to be in flow with study for a test, take the test. Okay. Like it felt good because like that may have been the longest period of time in my life where I didn't resist things was high school because I was just so tapped in and focused. Sure, there's other things that come with that. But like, it's just interesting for me to reflect on parts of my life that weren't resistant. It's like resistance like really started in college and then really started once I got a job. This is how it shouldn't be. I shouldn't be doing this. I shouldn't be doing that. I can't do this. Like resistance. What a topic. It's applicable to every single person. And this is an important episode because when you resist things, you quite literally waste your life. And I'm talking to myself.
Yeah, it's really crazy. There have definitely been a lot of episodes where I was in a state of resistance. And I think it's really important to remember that like not one is better than the other. And I think it's really easy when we get caught up in our mind to want to look back and kind of penalize ourselves of, oh, why did you do that? And another thing I was doing the past few days was while I was recognizing it was in my head and I was like, oh, get out. And it's like that can keep us further stuck in it. As soon as you become aware of something, let it go. Just like that. Doesn't have to come with you to the next moment. So yeah, it's been a really helpful conversation to talk. And thoughts can drive you literally crazy. And you can stay in that resistance circle for your entire life. And that's why some people's life, you may be 80 years old and you could be the exact same. But things get worse. You're really angry. You're really frustrated. You hate the world. Your body hurts. And I just see how like the journey of freeing yourself is very painful, but we can always come back and we always will. So I honestly don't want to stop talking, but we can end the episode, I guess.
Well, we always say this and never actually do it. So I'll say this lightly. Maybe for this second episode this week, we can do a part 2 on this topic because I guess we'll see where we are when we record this in the next couple of days. But this feels really relevant in my life, and it could be interesting to talk about this again from another perspective in 2 days or a day, because perspectives on this are always shifting in every moment. And it feels like if there was a key to life to enjoying it, this is it. And like, I don't even mean that heavily. I just mean that lightly. You can never rest on anything as being the answer, but no buts.
It's really just getting comfortable going through shit, not judging the shit, and not thinking the shit will be forever.
That's true. And that's why when it's good, you celebrate it being good. Because it might not be free for a little while longer. Like when things are good, like you celebrate. And good is objective.
But it's like you're never going to be free from the reality of the pain of life. So it's like, let's not use words like good. It's like acceptance. You know, it's peace.
Right. Like it's always, everything is always there. It's always there. So if you're trying to feel good, or if you're saying you're in a state of good, you're resisting any idea there could be something not enjoyable. But the more, this is how we got on this topic earlier. We were talking earlier today, Soph. But it's like if we are able to say, oh, like, you know, like when you're thinking, you're like, wow, like things are great. And then you start to think like, oh, but that thing. And then, but you accept it and you're like, but that's okay. It's not a pendulum. Like life is never like all the way good or all the way bad. It's or all the way bad. Like, we just are experiencing things as they are. And some things there's less resistance and sometimes there's not. But like you said, joy and these feelings that we often seek are found when we're least looking for them, when we're just going about our life and not resisting things.
Exactly. Well, it's been a helpful conversation, and I kind of forgot about the fact that I feel sick, which is interesting. Anywho, thank you to the listener for listening. And yeah, I'm excited to continue talking about this. I'm excited to be podcasting. It feels really good as a reminder in life that like life is hard and painful, but these outlets of expression are really, really beautiful because when we express, we release. So thank you, Daisy, for having this conversation. Thank you to myself for showing up. And thank you to the listener. We will talk to you again on Thursday.